They grew up too fast and never felt safe again. There's a haunting pattern that's hard to unsee once you recognize it. You meet someone, maybe they're a friend, maybe a stranger, maybe it's you, and you sense a kind of deep exhaustion buried beneath their smile. A maturity that didn't come from wisdom, but from survival. A grown-up who never really got to be a child. And when you ask them about their past, their voice tightens, their eyes shift, they give you a smile that doesn't quite reach their soul. I had to grow up fast, they say. And in that sentence is a world of unspoken stories, stories of chaos, of responsibility too early, of love that felt conditional, of safety that was never guaranteed. And what follows, almost always, is a lifetime spent searching for something that was never properly built. Let's start with the obvious. Childhood is supposed to be a sacred space, a time of innocence, of wonder, of play. But for so many people, that time was either cut short or never truly existed. They became emotional adults in a child's body, learning how to read a parent's mood before they learned how to read a book, mastering the art of calming others before they ever figured out how to calm themselves. When safety is inconsistent, a child learns to adapt, and children are brilliant at adapting. But adaptation always has a cost. That cost is usually invisibility, suppressing parts of yourself just to survive. And if that suppression becomes your default way of existing, you carry it into adulthood like invisible luggage. You keep performing safety even when it's no longer necessary. Do you ever wonder why some of us struggle so much with rest? Why it feels almost dangerous to slow down? Why joy feels unfamiliar, like a foreign language we were never taught? It's because when you grow up in survival mode, your nervous system never learns how to fully settle. You're always scanning, always bracing, always preparing for the next emotional storm. And even when life gets objectively better, that internal alarm doesn't turn off. Why? Because the body remembers what the mind tries to forget. That's not philosophy, that's neuroscience. But the deeper question is philosophical. What does it mean to build a life when the foundation was cracked before you even knew how to build?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
You see, what we often call resilience in people who grew up too fast is actually a form of chronic vigilance. They're not strong because they want to be, they're strong because they had to be. They didn't get the luxury of falling apart. They didn't get the luxury of being protected. And so they became hyper-independent, overachieving, self-sacrificing. They became the caretaker, the fixer, the one who always has it together. But underneath that armor is often a deep grief, a grief for the childhood they never had, for the version of themselves they had to abandon just to get by. And here's the trap. Society rewards this kind of person. We praise the ones who are mature for their age, who are so responsible, who have it all together. We reward the mask and ignore the cost. We don't ask what it took to become that way. We don't ask what it's like to never feel safe enough to fall apart. We don't ask what it's like to feel like your worth is tied to your usefulness. But maybe we should. Because behind every early bloomer is often someone who never got to bloom at all. Let's pause here and ask something dangerous. What parts of you did you have to hide in order to feel loved? What parts of you were too loud, too sensitive, too needy, too playful, too strange for the environment you were raised in? And how have those disowned parts shaped the person you are today? I'm not asking these questions to hurt you. I'm asking because healing begins with honesty. And honesty begins with naming what hurt. When we say someone grew up too fast, we're really saying their environment demanded something unnatural from them. We're saying they were given adult problems before they had the tools to process them. We're saying that safety wasn't a given, it was a performance. And that performance became their personality. But here's the twist. When you grow up like that, you don't just grow up fast, you grow up outside of yourself. You become a mirror for others. You learn how to be what they need, what they want, what keeps you safe. And in that process, your own needs become blurry. Your own desires become optional. You become a master at reading others, but a stranger to yourself. This is why so many people who grew up too fast struggle with identity. They can shapeshift into whatever role is needed: friend, partner, achiever, therapist, protector. But when they're alone, they feel empty. Not because they have nothing inside, but because they were never given the space to explore who that inside actually is. And that emptiness becomes a quiet ache, a hunger for something they can't quite name. We say people like this are strong, but strength without softness is a shield. And a shield, no matter how shiny, is still a sign of war. What if real strength isn't about holding it all together, but about learning how to let go? What if the real journey isn't about becoming more resilient, but about becoming more real? What if healing means giving yourself the safety you never had, so you can finally stop performing survival and start living truth? The armor of adaptation: why strength can be a disguise for pain. It's one of the most misunderstood truths about human nature. The people who seem the strongest are often the ones carrying the heaviest, most invisible burdens. The ones who smile through storms aren't always brave. They might just be practiced. Practiced at hiding, practiced at holding, practiced at being the one who doesn't break because they were never given permission to. And over time, that practice becomes their identity. Strength becomes their mask. Adaptation becomes their armor. But here's the paradox: armor might protect you, but it also isolates you. It keeps you safe, but also keeps you alone. When we talk about someone who had to grow up too fast, we often romanticize their strength. We say, wow, they're so mature, or they've been through so much and still managed to smile. But we rarely ask what that smile is hiding. Because when you've adapted to survive, your strength is often a response to trauma, not a reflection of peace. It's a structure built from necessity, not desire. And over time, what once kept you safe can start to keep you stuck. You become so good at being okay that even you start to believe it. You forget that the armor isn't who you are, it's who you had to become. Let's think about this. Adaptation is one of the most powerful instincts in nature. Plants bend toward light. Animals change colors to blend in. And humans? We adapt emotionally. We shrink or expand, conform or rebel, charm or detach, all depending on what our environment demands. And those adaptations, especially in childhood, often feel like superpowers. They help us survive. They help us get love, or at least avoid harm. But the problem is, survival is not the same as living. And once we're no longer in the environment that wounded us, the adaptations can start to hurt us. Have you ever found yourself automatically saying, "I'm fine," when you're not? Or feeling guilty for needing help? Or uncomfortable being vulnerable, even with people you trust? That's the armor talking. That's the part of you that learned, long ago, that vulnerability was dangerous. That being soft made you a target. That asking for comfort made you a burden. So now you carry yourself like a fortress, strong, independent, unshakable. But inside, there's fatigue. A weariness that doesn't come from weakness, but from carrying too much for too long. Here's a question most people never ask. What if the qualities you're most praised for are actually the ones rooted in pain? What if your independence is a reaction to being let down too many times? What if your emotional strength is a scar tissue response to never feeling safe enough to fall apart? What if your calmness isn't serenity but suppression? And if that's true, what would it take for you to feel safe enough to take the armor off? Taking off the armor is terrifying, even when the war is over, because the armor became your identity. Without it, who are you? And will the world still love you if you're soft, if you tremble, if you cry? Part of the healing journey is learning to test those questions, not all at once, not in dramatic ways, but slowly, gently, letting someone in, letting yourself rest, letting the tears come without apology. That's not weakness. That's reclaiming your humanity. The truth is, we all want to be seen. Not just the version of us that's strong and put together, but the version that's tired, scared, unsure. And yet, many of us have spent our whole lives only showing the parts that seem acceptable. We've curated ourselves for survival. But healing means risking rejection in order to find real connection. It means realizing that the armor that once protected you is now keeping you from the very intimacy you crave. So many of us perform strength because we don't believe we'll be loved if we're anything less. But what if the opposite is true? What if the people who truly matter can only find us when we're willing to be real? What if love doesn't come from being perfect, but from being whole? The armor helped you survive. Honor that. But don't confuse survival with fulfillment. Fulfillment comes when you no longer need to protect yourself from life but can finally step into it, open, soft, and free. The ghosts of safety, how unhealed childhood shapes every choice we make. We like to think we're making conscious choices, that we're in control of our lives, steering our paths with logic, intention, and clarity. But the truth is more complicated and more haunting, because so many of the choices we make as adults aren't really made by our adult selves. They're made by the child inside us who never felt safe. The child who learned early on that love had conditions, that stability was fragile, that emotions had to be managed, hidden, or punished. That trust was a gamble and needs were dangerous. And unless we stop and confront that inner reality, we will unknowingly carry those ghosts into everything we do, from the people we love, to the jobs we pursue, to the way we treat ourselves when no one's watching. It's easy to dismiss childhood as something we get over, but the nervous system doesn't forget. The body doesn't forget. It encodes experience. It builds patterns. And those patterns become the blueprint through which we interpret the world. If you were ignored, you might now over-explain yourself. If you were shamed, you might become a perfectionist. If you were constantly put in the role of caregiver, you might now feel guilty for simply receiving love without earning it. And the saddest part? We often recreate the very dynamics that hurt us, just because they feel familiar. Not because they're healthy, but because they're safe in a twisted, known way. Have you ever wondered why you keep choosing emotionally unavailable people? Why certain friendships feel one-sided? Why you sabotage good things, or feel anxious when life is calm, or fall into roles that drain you? That's not random. That's the ghost of your past whispering in your ear, guiding your hand. And that ghost doesn't care about your potential. It only cares about survival. It wants to keep you in the emotional territory it knows, even if that territory is full of pain. This is why self-awareness isn't optional, it's essential. Because without it, we'll keep making the same choices over and over again, calling it fate, bad luck, or just how I am. But it's not fate. It's not luck. It's programming. And programming can be rewritten, but only if we're willing to look at where it came from. Ask yourself, what did I learn about love growing up? Was it safe? Was it consistent? Did I feel seen? Or did I have to perform to be valued? Did I have to quiet my needs to avoid conflict? And what did I learn about myself in the process? That I was too much, not enough? That my pain was inconvenient? Your answers matter, because those core beliefs become the silent architects of your decisions. The adult you is trying to build a life, but if you're building on a foundation of unhealed wounds, the structure will always feel unstable. No amount of success, validation, or achievement will quiet the ache if the ache was never meant to be silenced but understood. You can't outrun a childhood you never fully felt. You can only return to it with compassion, curiosity, and care. Here's the irony. The very things we avoid, feeling our pain, facing our past, admitting our vulnerabilities, are the only things that can actually set us free. We resist them because we think they'll break us. But in reality, they're the doorway to wholeness. You don't need to be fearless to heal. You just need to be willing to sit with what hurts. Willing to listen to the younger version of yourself who was never allowed to speak. Willing to be honest about what safety means to you now and how you can start creating it, not through others, but within yourself. This is the deep work, the invisible work, the kind that doesn't get applause or likes or instant rewards. But it's the work that changes everything, because once you start making choices from your healed self, not your wounded one, life begins to feel different. Not easier, but more honest, more aligned, more yours. So I'll ask you this: Who's making your choices your present self, or the child still waiting to feel safe? Becoming the parent you never had, the path to inner safety and real freedom. There comes a moment, quiet, almost imperceptible, when you realize that no one is coming to save you in the way your younger self always hoped. No perfect parent, no ideal partner, no external force that will finally make you feel whole, seen, safe. At first, this realization can feel like heartbreak. But if you stay with it, if you don't run, it transforms into something else entirely: empowerment. Because if no one is coming to give you what you needed, then maybe, just maybe, you can give it to yourself. Maybe the person you've been waiting for is you. This isn't some vague self-help sentiment. It's the foundation of real healing. The child in you that grew up too fast didn't just lose time, they lost the sense of being nurtured, protected, and guided. And now, as an adult, you have the extraordinary opportunity to become what you never had, to become the parent you needed, the one who listens without judgment, who says you're allowed to feel this instead of get over it, the one who notices when you're overextending, people-pleasing, pretending, and gently says, you don't have to do that anymore. You're safe now. This is where many people get stuck. They wait for the world to change, for their childhood to be rewritten, for someone else to finally validate their pain. But healing doesn't mean rewriting the past, it means reparenting the present. It means learning how to hold yourself, especially in the moments when you feel small, scared, or triggered. It means building trust with yourself, slowly, like you would with a wounded animal, consistently showing up, being gentle, being kind. Let's be honest, this kind of inner work isn't glamorous. There's no dramatic breakthrough, no overnight transformation. It looks like putting your phone down when you're overwhelmed instead of numbing out. It looks like choosing rest over productivity, even when old voices scream that you're lazy. It looks like forgiving yourself for not knowing better and honoring yourself now that you do. It looks like saying no without guilt, allowing joy without fear, and letting sadness move through you without shame. And over time, something miraculous happens. Your nervous system begins to soften. Your patterns begin to shift. You stop reacting from old wounds and start responding from new wisdom. You stop chasing people who feel familiar but unsafe. You stop mistaking chaos for love and silence for rejection. You begin to choose differently, not because you're forcing it, but because you're finally safe enough to. This is what freedom really means. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of self. The ability to stay with yourself no matter what, to be your own anchor in a storm. To walk into a room and know that you don't have to perform to be worthy, that you don't need to shrink to be loved, that your story matters not because it was easy, but because you lived it and chose to grow. So ask yourself, what does real safety feel like in your body? What would it mean to offer that to yourself every day in small, consistent ways? What would it look like to build a life where you no longer have to perform survival, but can finally live authenticity? You didn't choose the wounds. You didn't choose the chaos, but you get to choose what happens next. You get to choose how you love yourself now. And maybe that's the most powerful thing anyone can do: break the cycle, not by erasing the past, but by becoming the kind of presence you always needed. You grew up too fast, and maybe you never felt safe again. But it's not too late. You can choose to slow down now. You can choose to come home to yourself. And when you do, you'll realize the safety you've always longed for was never out there. It was always waiting for you to return to it.